Hello everyone and welcome to the Stripe YouTube channel. Today we're diving into a topic that sounds simple but is anything but simple in the place. Beyond translation, what global brands get wrong about email marketing in East Asia. This conversation is especially important because when global brands think about expanding into East Asia, the first question is often how do we translate our emails? But as we'll discuss today, translation is really the real challenge. The bigger gap usually sits between global HQ assumptions and local market realities. And in many cases, the friction points are not technical, they're structural. They relate to language choice and tone calibration, mobile consumption behavior, ecosystem integration with platforms like Line, KakaoTalk, and WeChat, and of course, compliance nuances and trust expectations. Today's goal is to move beyond theory and provide strategic, actionable insight, especially for brands that are either entering East Asia markets or already operating there but not seeing the results as expected. And I'm very happy to have a fantastic expert joining us for this discussion, Harleen June. She is a regional B2B digital marketing professional with more than 7 years of experience leading past initiatives across healthcare and medical device markets. Hello, Harleen. Halim specialized in building scalable digital marketing infrastructure that connects CRM systems, campaign execution, and localized product launches into measurable business growth. Her experience spans Korea, Japan, Malaysia, Australia, and New Zealand, where she has worked closely with sales, product, and global HQ teams to align global strategy with regional execution. And I am Alina Samulska-Holina from Stripe team, and today I'll be guiding our conversation. So let's dive in, and I'd love to start with a big picture question. When global brands say Asian market, what is the biggest misconception hidden in that phrase?
Hello, Erina, and hello, everyone. I think that is a really good question. From my experience, the biggest misconception is that Asia is one market. In reality, each country has a different user behavior and also platform preferences and also binary trust expectations. So a single global email strategy usually does not work well across East Asia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you had to describe each market in one sentence from an email marketing perspective, how would you characterize Japan, South Korea, and China?
As you can see in my slide, Japan is more formal and trust-driven, and email still plays an important role. However, South Korea is very mobile first, and communication often moves fast through the KakaoTalk. And also, China is more ecosystem-driven with the WeChat shaping much of digital communication.
Yeah, that's great. And how does consumer behavior differ in terms of email usage and trust across these three markets?
As you can see in my slide, in the table there's an email role. So therefore, the role of email is different in each market. In some markets, email is still trusted the formal channel, while in others, it is more secondary to messaging platforms, such as South Korea. Trust also depends on the tone, brand, familiarity, and how well the message fit local expectation. So please be aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's great. And Are expectations around tone and formality significantly different between Japan and, for example, South Korea?
Yes, I would say so. South Korea and Japan has a similar culture. However, from my experience, Japan generally expect more formal and careful tone, especially in business communication. And South Korea is a little bit casual than Japan, but still you need to have a formal tone around when it comes to email marketing.
Yeah, that's great. And I think what's already becoming clear is that these markets have distinct expectations culturally, behaviorally, and structurally. And this is exactly where global strategies often begin to crack. Because what works in the US or Europe, even when technically well executed, doesn't always translate into performance in East Asia. So let's move into the friction points and talk about where global strategies most commonly break when they enter these markets. And my first question is about localization. Many brands believe localization equals translation. What does authentic localization actually require?
In short, translation is only one part of localization. Authentic localization is also requires the right tone and level to formality, like I mentioned, especially be careful about Japan and South Korea, and also cultural fit and channel strategies. Even if the words are correct, the message may still feel unnatural locally. For example, I put the Korean emails example in there. It is from global company, and it seems like localized the email send it to the Korean user. Uh, the in that example, parades like recommended for you may translate literally, but the tone can sound slightly informal. And more natural phrasing might emphasize respect toward the reader, like you can see the right example, such as a version close to recommend for our customer. These adjustments may seem minor, but they signal professionalism and credibility. So localization requires, from my experience, firstly, tone adaptation, secondary cultural nuance, and finally, sometimes rewriting the message rather than the translating it directly.
That Thanks. I think that's a really great example, and it shows us the difference. And one more question about localization in B2B email marketing across the path. How important is hierarchy, formality, and title usage?
Oh, it is very important, especially market like Japan and Korea, South Korea. The way you address people can affect how professional and trustworthy the message bears. So local business etiquette should be reflected in the email tone and structure.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And we've talked about tone and cultural calibration, but even if the message is right, the execution layer matters just as much. Let's talk about mobile behavior because consumption patterns in East Asia are heavily smartphone driven. Then I made my research about East Asian countries. I saw that over 80% of people check emails on smartphones. And what does mobile first really mean beyond responsive designs? And we talk about East Asian email marketing.
This is a really great question. Thank you for asking that question, Elena. From my experience, mobile first is not only about the responsive layouts. So affects how information is structured. For example, like shorter subject lines and clear highlighting of information and faster scanning of the contents, and maybe finally more compact visual layouts. Since I'm South Korea, I very read my email very fast, like scanning. So having the shorter subject lines and clear hierarchy of information is very important from my perspective. And also because and in many East Asian markets, people check email quickly during the commuting or between tasks. So email has to communicate value within just a few seconds of attention.
Yeah. And what design mistakes do Western brands make most often in mobile emails for East Asia? Maybe just for example, maybe you saw something in your emails.
Yeah. Well, from my experience, I can think about the one common mistakes from the global HQ provide is that is making emails too long or visual heavy. Another might be you might using layouts or CTA structures that are harder to scan on mobile. So therefore, in mobile first market, simplicity and clarity matters a lot.
Yeah, it really can be a problem when you read on mobile. And even if we design beautifully optimized mobile emails, there is another layer many global teams overlook: the ecosystem itself. And it's really interesting for us because it's very different from our Western markets maybe. And so my first question is about email in Europe or the US often stands alone. How does the presence of super apps like Line, KakaoTalk, and WeChat change email strategy?
Thinking about my experience, just a moment. I think they changed the role of email itself. In East Asia, email often works best as a part of a broader ecosystem, not as a standalone channel, not like Western market. So brands need to think about how email connected with the message they want to provide, and also messaging platform and local user behavior, because they are so different with the Western market from my experience.
And should email drive traffic to websites or to these platforms instead?
I think it depends on the market and the campaign goal. But in many cases, it is more effective to contact email with the platforms that user already trust and use every day, like Line for Japan, KakaoTalk for Korea, and WeChat for China. So the destination should match local behavior, not just global preferences.
And what happens when global HQ ignores the ecosystem's reality?
I think usually performance suffers. The campaigns may look correct from a global perspective, but it does not match how people actually engage locally. That creates maybe gap between delivery and real user response. So maybe leads to misunderstanding.
Yeah. That's really interesting, and we've identified there things break from localization depth to mobile execution to ecosystem integration. So now I'd love to make this very practical for our audience, and that's why my next question is: if the company enters a pass next quarter, what are the first three things they must do before sending their first localized email?
That is a really awesome question. And I would suggest the three prioritize, as you can see in slide. Firstly, understanding the local digital ecosystem, because East Asia market, they have their own super apps. So understanding those platforms would be critical before the sending their first localized email. And also before the launching the campaigns, not only understanding the digital platform, branding, the company should analyze how customer actually interact with the platform in each market, because KakaoTalk also includes not only messaging, also they have a e-commerce system, and also brand can establish their channel like a social media. So the company need to understand customer behaviors with those platforms. And secondary, localized beyond the translation would be nice, because like I mentioned earlier, the tone and cultural context and like a highlighting is also very important to understand their own market. So sometimes rewriting message entirely would be awesome to bring more engagement when it comes to email. And finally, the design for the mobile first behavior, it is also important, because in many is the Asian market, like earlier you mentioned before, most people use a smartphone, and smartphone are the primary way people interact with the email. So those three priority is I suggest.
Okay, that's great. And one more question. It's close to it, but maybe from about another points. What should brands prioritize first? Email list building, messaging app presence, local content partnership, or CRM adaptation? If you need to choose.
That is a really tough question, because all of them is very important. But thinking about my experience, I think I usually start with ecosystem understanding, like market step and behavior, and CRM adaptation. Because without that foundation, email list building or content partnership may not work effectively. So structure has to come first, just from my experience.
Yeah, thank you. That's great perspective, I think. And what's the biggest mistake global teams make in their first 6 months in East Asia?
I think the one common mistake is that assuming that same email strategy that works in the US or Europe, we're automatically working in East Asia. As we talk about the East Asia ecosystem, it is very different with the Western. So in reality, customer behavior and digital ecosystem are very different. In short, if I mention about an example, in Korea, many brands combine email with KakaoTalk engagement rather than relying on email alone.
Yeah, interesting. And one more interesting question for me. How should brands balance global brand consistency? Because especially for big brand, it's very important to be brand consistency everywhere, and local autonomy.
That I've always thinking about these things, because it is hard to find the balance. But thinking about my past experience, I think the best model is usually a hybrid structure. So global headquarters should maintain brand identity and core messaging and visual guidelines, but local teams should adapt a language and tone because they are experts in that area, and cultural references and channel mix. And I believe when this balance works well, campaigns stay globally constant while still feeling locally relevant. So it means success.
Yeah. And then company have already started working with email marketing in East Asia. So what early signals indicate that the strategy is working or failing?
That is also a great question. Let me just thinking about that a little bit. I think from my experience, just don't look at OpenLate itself. I'd like to say look at the ecosystem bridge itself. Like for example, if your email successfully drives user to maybe South Korea, your KakaoTalk channel or for the Japan line official account, that is a strong signal of trust. And if they stay only on the email and don't interact with the local platforms, and you might need to check your tone or localization depth. That's my advice.
Yeah. And this has been incredibly insightful, especially the structural gaps you highlighted. And before we wrap up, I'd love to ask one final question. If you could give one piece of advice to global marketing directors planning expansion into East Asia, what would it be?
Oh, that is a hard question, but I believe it is a really great question. If I may give a piece of my advice to global marketing director, I'd like to say balancing constancy and autonomy. Global HQ should keep the brand identity and core messaging, like I mentioned before, keeping the hybrid model. And from just a past experience, just please give the local team the power of adapt the language and tone and the channel mix. So I believe the trusting your local expert to bring the gap between your global strategy and local reality would be awesome to bring the a really good result. That is my advice.
Yeah, thank you so much for this advice. And it was our final question. And Halim, thank you so much for this incredibly insightful conversation. I think that really stands out in that interest in East Asian markets isn't about translating email. It's about rethinking structure, behavior, and ecosystem integration from the ground up. For everyone watching, if you plan an expansion into Japan, South Korea, or China, I hope today's discussion gives you not just idea, but a clear strategic lens. And if you found this session valuable, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Striper channel, and share it with your team, especially if you're working on global campaigns. Thank you very much for being with us today, and we'll see you in the next session. Bye.
Bye.